even though I was a total loser who couldn't even take care of himself, the moment I stepped into another world, I instantly shattered the 100-year-old record for returning, all because I possess the ability to create infinite clones. My first clone dedicated himself to studying forbidden magic, vowing to become an immortal demon god renowned throughout the entire continent. My second clone joined the main church, using his pure faith to knock on the gates of divinity and ascend, becoming a glorious holy knight. My third clone sought out the demonic blood clan. Relying on the power of his pure, untainted bloodline, he naturally took his place as the leader of the new blood clan. My fourth clone, with the people in his heart, single-mindedly pursued justice, protecting the safety of all with his mortal body. He became a continental hero revered by thousands. My fifth clone relied on his extraordinary business acumen, making calculated moves through the business circles of every nation, eventually reaching the very top of the continent, joining the ranks of the most prestigious merchant tycoons. You see, this is a world where people awaken special abilities. Several hundred years ago, human bodies began to mutate, and all sorts of strange powers started to appear. Shortly after, they would be forcibly transported to another world by some power. Only by completing extremely arduous tasks there could they return to Blue Star. However, the number of humans who actually made it back to Blue Star alive was practically nil. And so, the despairing awakened began to cause terrifying riots before their mandatory transportations. During one of those riots, I watched my family die before my eyes, and I myself was left permanently crippled. Utterly devastated, I chose a life of solitude. At this moment, as I stared at my numb legs, I cursed the heavens for their injustice. But just as my mind was wandering, a cold, mechanical voice suddenly echoed in my ear. Host detected. Akasha system now connecting. Awakening soul hidden ability. Incarnation. Host will be forcibly transported to the other world in 2.5 hours. Instantly, I stared blankly at the pop-up window in front of me. If an ordinary person's chances of going to the other world and ultimately surviving were 5%, then for a cripple like me who can't even walk, I probably wouldn't even survive the first day, because time in the other world passes 10 times faster than on Blue Star. And before this, the fastest record for an awakened to return to Blue Star was 1 year. That means I would have to survive in the other world for at least 10 years. At that moment, all I could do was secretly pray that incarnation was a powerful survival skill. However, what happened next was the appearance of a figure in front of me who looked exactly like me. I guessed this must be the effect of the incarnation skill, because I could now perceive the field of vision of the other body. Instantly, a ridiculous idea came to me. I then closed my eyes and commanded my clone to walk into the transport portal to the other world. As I looked at the system window that said transport complete, I was panting heavily, but I soon felt that something was off. I had clearly sent my incarnation to complete the transport mission in my place. But at this moment, I could clearly feel that my own body had also arrived in the other world at the same time. It felt as if my soul was simultaneously controlling two bodies. Then, with a ding, a system notification informed me, due to returning to Blue Star independently, without using the Karma Shop. Special ability unlocked. Otherworld teleportation gate. You can use the gate to move to places you have previously visited. Can only be used once a day. Simultaneously, you have successfully set a new record for returning to Blue Star. Reward. Host receives 1,910,213 karma points. At that moment, my face was filled with utter disbelief. If I wasn't mistaken, this must have happened after I summoned my clone back to my main body, causing the system to misjudge and think that I had already returned to Blue Star. At the same time, this also broke the long-standing completion record, and the system rewarded me with karma points. For an awakened, this was an extremely useful thing. It's distributed quantitatively based on the performance of the awakened in the other world. Only by accumulating enough karma points can you buy the item in the shop to return to Blue Star. The awakened can also use it to enhance their skills. And I had almost 2 million karma points in my hands. This was the accumulated power of a nearly top-tier awakened being, gathered over 2 years. Then, with a wave of my hand, I opened the status window for recovery enhancement. In an instant, a gentle force seemed to surge into my leg bones. Very quickly, I could feel that the sensation in both my legs had been completely restored. Next, I turned my attention to the unique skill enhancement window. With a ding, the avatar's body awakened the ability to think for itself. In other words, from now on, the avatar could act on its own in the other world, even without my control. On top of that, it could also filter out certain negative stimuli and emotions for me. This meant that whether it was dimensional dizziness or the avatar taking damage, I wouldn't share the avatar's sensations. It was just like being in a virtual world, controlling a game character. Plus, the number of avatars I could split off would increase as the skill leveled up. I decided to name the first avatar Hans. Because his unique ability was magic affinity, I decided to send him to the other world first, to complete adventure quests for me. The second avatar's name was Heinz. His unique ability was toughness, so he would stay on Blue Star to train his physical strength. About 2.5 minutes later, I transferred my vision to Hans's body. The portal point in the other world was near a dense forest. But it wasn't long before I ran right into a ferocious beast. I quickly drew my short sword and blocked the pouncing, bear-like beast. It was just as I had expected. My real body didn't feel any negative emotions like fear from it. Then, I took my short sword and infused magic into the beast's body. With a squelch, the blade pierced through the beast's torso. After a short pause, I saw on a small path on the other side. A village had appeared. The village chief, Thomas, was a kind-looking old man. He welcomed me to his village with a smile and very generously offered to let me stay for the night. After I sensed that Hans's body had Aaron fast asleep, I returned to my own body. But just a moment later, an unsettling thought rushed into my mind. Immediately, a red pop-up window appeared from the system. Detected. Avatar Hans has died. The avatar's traits and accumulated data will be reset. Since Hans died in the village, I suspected it was highly likely that Village Chief Thomas was the one behind it. If I wasn't mistaken, he must have put a sleeping drug in the dinner. But before I could figure it all out, the system notified me again, re-establishing connection with Hans. And the individual's race has been changed to Undead. Acquired special skill, Corrupted Heart. Seeing this, I quickly shared Hans's vision again. Right now, hordes of skeleton-like creatures appeared before me. Their clothing looked more like that of the original villagers, not other awakened beings. Then there was only one possibility. The village chief had gone so insane that he turned the entire village into undead. Soon, a strange force appeared in my body, compelling my actions. Although, with my current physical stats, I could completely ignore it. To avoid alerting the enemy, it was better to follow their commands for now. It's just that, this force felt very familiar. Feeling it carefully, it seemed like the same force I use when I control Hans's body. If Hans's magic affinity trait was taking effect, maybe I could use it to control the other undead skeletons. About 7 days later, I had successfully controlled one undead skeleton by using the magic affinity trait. And during that time, I also discovered something very interesting. Besides being able to control undead creatures, I can also control some of the smaller creatures, which gives me better options for my nightly surveillance. Through my vision sharing ability, I discovered that every night, Village Chief Thomas's companions would head to an abandoned wooden house, from which a faint aura emanated. Even though the mind hub filtered out emotions, my true body still instinctively felt a flicker of fear. Moreover, there was a faint, decaying scent inside, the same as the one on my own body. So I suspect that Thomas and his cronies are most likely some extremely evil black mages. The presence of other skeletons in that house suggests that they're likely performing some kind of ancient ritual. Then, just as I turned around to search for any trace of Thomas, a powerful surge of energy silently pierced through my body. Just then, Thomas's figure slowly approached me. Fortunately, he didn't detect the aura I had left on it. The next day, a young man appeared in the village. He said his older brother had gone missing here, so he wanted to meet with Village Chief Thomas to ask for information. The moment Village Chief Thomas heard this, his eyes widened in shock, because he realized the young man before him looked exactly like the awakened one he'd encountered the past few nights. And this young man was none other than my second avatar, Heinz. I introduced myself, saying that I was Hans's twin brother. My telepathy was telling me that Hans had to be somewhere nearby. I then shifted my consciousness back to Hans's body. Right then, inside that abandoned wooden house, several undead skeletons were arranged in a large circle. And in the center of them was a dark purple crystal. I was right. Thomas was indeed using black magic to absorb the soul energy from the skeleton villagers. A system prompt informed me this crystal was called the Fragment of the Undying. Just by facing this crystal, I could feel an immense sense of pressure. Who on earth is this Undying King? For just a single fragment to unleash such power. While no one was watching, I turned to the undead skeletons before me and cast my magic affinity skill. In an instant, a flood of negative emotions rushed into my mind. The very next moment, it felt like my head was about to burst. Then, with a ding, a system notification window popped up. Growth conditions met. Elite Undead Hans has evolved into an Undying Sorcerer, Necromancer. Special condition. Dark magic within the fragment has fused with the individual. Progress on the Fragment of the Undying has reached 1/3. Acquired special skill, Wisdom of Evil. This must be the effect of the magic affinity. It fused the Fragment of the Undying into Hans's body, triggering the evolution. Soon, using magic affinity, I completely seized command of the skeleton army. This scene startled the guard on duty, because he realized the skeletons before him had completely broken free from his control. This gave him a very, very bad feeling. A moment later, the door, sealed with a dark magic barrier, was smashed open by the skeleton army under my command. This was thanks to my new skill, Wisdom of Evil. With just a single glance, I can now comprehend any evil attribute magic. Just then, Village Chief Thomas, radiating a chilling aura, stormed over to me. He sternly demanded to know what I had done with the Fragment of the Undying. He could no longer sense even a trace of the fragment's aura. Hearing this, I nonchalantly formed a phantom image of it over my heart. This sent Thomas into a fury. He roared that he couldn't tolerate me having the audacity to fuse the fragment of the Undying into such an inferior body. As he spoke, Thomas brandished his magic wand. Instantly, a mysterious aura filled the air. It seemed like all the surrounding dark magic was under his control. This was his skill, the Finger of Death. With a loud rumble from deep underground, a giant spike erupted. I paid it no mind. I simply materialized an energy shield and effortlessly absorbed it. The sight left Thomas stunned. He never expected me to be a master of dark magic. With a wave of his hand, the souls of every dark mage in the village flew towards him. After the numerous souls merged, they slowly formed a jet black crown. He then began to chant. It looked like he was about to cast a powerful spell, but I had run out of patience to waste on him. With a loud bang, Thomas was struck by a powerful force, his body sent flying backward. His heart clenched as he was overcome with an unprecedented sense of terror. He stammered, trying to say something, but soon, he breathed his last. Meanwhile, in a mysterious ancient castle, the Saintess Liasta had a vision of the near future. In the western continent, there were signs of the undead returning. After dealing with Thomas, I went outside the village. The hundreds of undead warriors had nearly all been destroyed in the battle. However, ever since Hans's body evolved into a necromancer, he no longer required living beings. He could now control even corpses at will. I then found Thomas's corpse. During the battle, he had drained the souls of all the dark mages. So, if I wanted to get information about the Undead King, I would have to interrogate Thomas's soul. But, to my surprise, I couldn't detect any trace of a soul on his body. From the marks on his body, it looked as though someone had forcibly extracted it using a magic circle. This meant there had to be a more powerful organization behind Thomas. After taking care of these troublesome matters, I returned to my real body and prepared to enhance my own attributes. Because Hans had evolved into a high-level life form, a necromancer, my real body now felt an instinctual fear whenever it faced Hans. Ding! Awakener William's spirit stat has surpassed the benchmark. Skill: Mind like still water, acquired. It allows the user's mind to remain unaffected by external stimuli, and defends against psychic attacks. After I finished upgrading my skills, I always had this strange feeling, as if I always managed to acquire the exact skill I needed most at any given moment. Later, I went outside to figure out dinner. Just in case, I had been using dark magic to keep Hans hidden inside my shadow. But it seemed I had been overthinking things. Blue Star was still quite safe at the moment. However, before I could even finish that thought, a loud explosion erupted behind me. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw that the jewelry store ahead was being robbed. Among them were beastmen. If I'm not mistaken, they must be the infamous villains, a name for those who use their awakened powers to commit crimes. Although there are righteous awakeners who protect ordinary citizens, if they were any good at it, my family wouldn't have died so horribly at the hands of these scum. Just then, the thugs robbing the jewelry store happened to run right past me. I kept telling myself, the Guardians will track them down. After years of living in seclusion, I had absolutely no confidence in myself. Meanwhile, the villains who robbed the jewelry store arrived at an abandoned house. All they had to do was pass through the portal they'd placed there in advance to escape the Guardians' pursuit. However, when they got there, all they found were their comrades, lying unconscious. Seeing this, the orc quickly knelt down to ask his companion what on earth had happened. Just then, a skeleton slowly emerged from the shadows. I was beginning to understand. Right now, I'm not just myself. I'm also Hans and Heinz. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the National Guardian Association, they dispatched a small team to track down the villains causing all the trouble. About 2.5 minutes later, when they arrived at the scene, they didn't find the standoff they were expecting. All they saw were the errant bodies of the villains. It looked like someone had already taken care of this bunch. As for me, I was walking home. Honestly, it feels pretty good to stretch my bones every once in a while. After getting home, I took control of my second body, Heinz, and arrived in front of a castle. This was a bustling town, one I'd heard about from that old geezer, Thomas. He'd told me about it, but this place wasn't nearly as prosperous as he described. On the contrary, it was completely deserted. I couldn't even see any guards checking on outsiders. Then, as I was passing a small alley, I saw a bald man bullying a little girl. It looked like he was trying to extort money from her. But that was someone else's business. It had nothing to do with me. After they left, I found the little girl and asked her a few questions. I want to hire you as my guide. I'll pay you 2 silver coins. Afterward, under Ella's guidance, I came to the best inn in town. I told her she could be my city guide every day, and the pay would be 2 silver coins. That way, she wouldn't have to pay protection money like she did today. Soon, it was the next day. I learned a bit about the city's history from Ella. Its name is Azantu, a small city in the Kingdom of Buria, located in the western part of the continent. There was one thing that I found very strange. All over the city, there was a strange symbol painted everywhere. And it didn't look like it was done with ordinary paint. Instead, it looked more like fresh blood. Ella explained that this was actually the mark of the Barak organization, which controls the streets. I soon discovered that Ella had a unique ability. She could smell everything nearby. I knew this because she easily identified that I'd had chicken blood soup for breakfast, just by smelling the scent on me. However, just as we were leaving the alley, a blood-soaked figure swayed unsteadily in the shadows. 2.5 days passed just like that. I waited for a long time at our designated meeting spot. But I didn't see Ella anywhere. This struck me as very odd. Usually, she was always the first one to arrive. Just then, 2 figures slowly walked toward me. I recognized them as the ones from the other day. The bald men who were extorting Ella. I tactfully handed them a handful of silver coins. After taking the protection money, they turned to leave, very satisfied. That's when I heard them as they were walking away, muttering something to themselves. They mentioned they had caught a girl yesterday. And looking closely, the tattoos on their necks were identical to the symbols I'd seen on the streets a few days ago. Thinking of this, I strode forward to stop them, but in the next second, as if possessed, all my courage drained away. I still couldn't completely overcome my inner demons. Suddenly, just then, I heard Ella's voice from behind me. I turned around and realized I'd gotten it all wrong. But by then, the bald man, without a word, was already raising his fist at me. Without thinking too much, I handed all the silver coins I had to the bald man. Because I could see that Ella looked incredibly distressed. I tried to soothe her, asking her to tell me what had happened. Holding back tears, she said that her younger brother had suddenly disappeared. As she spoke, I suddenly remembered something. If I hadn't misheard them earlier, the bald men had said they'd captured a little girl. Then it's possible that besides her, other children were also taken. After hearing my words, it was as if all the strength had been instantly drained from Ella's legs. If it was really the Buria organization that took her brother, then there's no hope at all. Because they don't want protection money, they want blood. I was a bit confused as to why they would need blood. Then, Ella told me about the true origin of this city. This city, named Izantu, is actually a larder for vampires. All the organizations, including the Buria organization, are in service to the vampires. None of the citizens in the city have the right to leave here. Because they are born to be food for vampires. That's why I saw the city gates were unguarded. They're just hoping for more outsiders to come here and provide more food. After understanding all this, I cupped Ella's face. If everything you've said is true, we have to hurry and rescue your brother. Hearing this, Ella had a worried look on her face. It's not that no one has stood up to resist these organizations before, but in the end, they all just became food for the vampires. I told her not to worry about that, because I had just triggered a hidden quest. Save the unfortunate girl. And so, with Ella as my guide, I arrived at the bald man's hideout. Just then, someone ran up excitedly. He had a smug look of showing off. About me, the fool from out of town, who had willingly given them a hefty protection fee. He didn't see the dark expression on my face. Instead, he continued on his own, saying he figured I must have been able to get in here by giving the bald man at the gate a lot of silver coins, so he hoped I would treat everyone equally. I ignored him and stated my reason for being here. Where did you take the children? Hearing my words, the man looked annoyed. This was the first time anyone had dared to use a questioning tone with them. The next second, I shot my hand out and gripped his neck tightly. I'll give you one more chance. Tell me where the children are being held. Otherwise, I'll treat everyone equally, and make sure you end up just like the bald man. Before coming here, I'd already figured something out. I have the strong and super recovery skills. I wasn't afraid of these guys at all. And sure enough, the daggers they thrust at me couldn't even pierce my skin. I chuckled and told them I came prepared. Ordinary iron weapons can't possibly pierce my super protective suit. It didn't take long for me to beat them all down. But even so, they were still incredibly stubborn. They just told me one thing. What you're doing now is all in vain. Because our master is coming soon. Afterwards, in an abandoned wooden house, I found a little boy. I'd seen his picture. It had to be Ella's brother, Aaron. Just then, a bat appeared at the window. And in the instant I turned to leave with Aaron, a voice questioned me from behind. Why are you in my restaurant? And why are you taking my food? He figured I must be one of those people from the sky-defying covenant. If not that, then I had to be Aaron's brother. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to have the guts to stand up to a vampire. I chuckled and told him, I'm not part of this sky-defying covenant you're talking about. I'm just an outsider who was extorted for money by your underlings. The moment the words left my mouth, the vampire bared his fangs and lunged at me. I pushed Aaron behind me and told him to get out of here quickly. Whatever happens, don't look back. Then, I swung my silver sword, unleashing a silver arc, and sidestepped to block his attack. Instantly, the vampire raised his other hand and clawed viciously at my throat. With a sickening sound, my body was thrown backwards. Although, with my super recovery skill, I didn't have to worry about these injuries. But it still wasn't enough against a creature like a vampire. To him, it was like I was trying to smash a rock with an egg. Just then, the vampire lifted me up, and his fangs slowly moved toward my neck. At this point, I had no other choice. I spit a stone out of my mouth, and bit down on it hard. The vampire instantly panicked. The thing in my mouth was a spark magic tool, designed specifically to counter their kind. From the looks of it, I was planning to take him down with me. I didn't give him a chance to react, using my strength skill to hold him tight. Since you figured it out, you can die peacefully with me. With a tremendous roar, the nearby houses were instantly engulfed in a sea of flames. But my body was only partially burned. I never thought I'd be able to survive something like that. I guessed my strength skill must have protected my body to some extent. It was 2.5 days later when I finally found Ella. The moment she saw me, Ella threw her arms around me excitedly. She hadn't seen me for so many days. She thought I had died in that inferno. And actually, she wasn't wrong. By the time I returned to the inn, Heinz was already dead. And this is my third body, Heinz 2. Even though it's a new body, I generated it as a perfect one-to-one replica of Heinz. So, I guess you could basically still call me Heinz, right? After finishing the Save the Unfortunate Girl quest, I went back to the inn to rest. After that fight with the vampire, my body seemed to have grown stronger. Then, suddenly, a figure appeared from behind and grabbed my neck tightly. He said, "Finally caught you. The one who destroyed our family's food stores." In that instant, I couldn't muster any strength. Somehow, the vampire behind me was preventing me from using my skills. Then, without another word, he bit my neck. He licked the blood from the corner of his mouth and mused that a child's blood really does taste better. At that point, I couldn't even process what he was saying, because I could feel my body undergoing some kind of change. The next moment, a system window popped up, informing me that Heinz's race had changed to vampire. I had acquired the special skill Remnant Blood, and my super recovery skill had changed to regeneration. Meanwhile, the vampire leader, Varak, unleashed a terrifying aura. Because Heinz's race was now vampire, my body had an involuntary, unconditional urge to obey a higher-ranking vampire. Varak asked if I was the one who saved Aaron. Trembling, I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm just an outsider from another place. Because my clear mirror, still water skill helps me filter out all forms of mind control, I was able to defy my body's instincts and hide the truth. Hearing this, Varak didn't overthink it and chose to believe me. He was extremely confident in his ability to control lesser vampires. He then told me to follow him to take care of something. I figured this was a good chance to gather some intel. Soon, we arrived at an ancient castle hidden deep within the forest. This was the vampire family's branch headquarters in Azantu, and Varak was its commander. All the vampires were gathered here, apparently for some kind of banquet. Just then, a female vampire came up from behind and hugged my arm. Her name was Helen. Just like me, she'd been turned after being bitten by a vampire. We were both remnant bloods, not traditional pure bloods. That's why she was so friendly the moment she saw me. I didn't really understand what a remnant blood was. Apparently, it just means a class of non-pure blood vampires. They are usually the offspring of a vampire and a human lover. Or, in some cases, mutated beings like me, who were bitten by a pure blood vampire. If you were to compare it to human class society, half-bloods are like the knight class. Pure bloods like Varak are the nobility, while Lady Corin, the matriarch of all vampires, is the royalty. The purest, most ancient true blood flows through her veins. Of course, above that, there is also holy blood. But that only exists in ancient myths. Just then, all the surrounding conversations came to an abrupt halt. Because Varak was announcing something important. He had just received some intelligence. Humans, those people from the heaven-defying vow have disappeared with a fragment of the Undead King. After an investigation, it was discovered that the last place the fragment of the Undead King appeared was their destroyed granary, which is the warehouse they used to imprison fresh blood. So, from now on, all vampires must strictly investigate their assigned areas. If anything unusual is found, report to me immediately. Hearing his words, I suddenly understood a few things. The village that Thomas used to refine the fragment of the Undead King was right near Azantu, so it's very likely they are the ones Varak spoke of. Members of the Heaven-Defying Vow organization. The next day, I followed Helen to patrol our assigned area. Since we are both half-bloods, I happen to be assigned to manage the same district as her. It's just that patrolling during the day for a vampire is extremely uncomfortable. Along the way, Helen and I started chatting. It turns out that within the vampire ranks, they are also refining fragments of the Undead King. Once the refining is complete, they plan to merge them with the ones from the Heaven-Defying Vow. That's why they're making such drastic moves right now. But for low-level vampires like us, we have no right to know where the fragments of the Undead King are hidden. When night fell, I had dinner with Ella and her brother. The whole time, I kept myself completely covered. Otherwise, I was worried that my transformation into a vampire would scare them. Although I can suppress the vampiric thirst for blood, some of the physical changes are impossible to hide. During our conversation, Ella told me she thinks she knows where a fragment of the Undead King is hidden. A year ago, she had a job cleaning tombs. Every Friday, members of the Belial organization would enter a stone chamber there, and every time they opened the door, a terrible, evil smell would pour out. Time quickly passed, and soon it was late at night. Inside the stone chamber, Varak's assistant was dealing with a sacrifice. His name was Teofil, and he was also a pure blood vampire. Suddenly, just then, a horde of skeletons appeared in the stone chamber with a crash. Seeing this, Teofil ordered his subordinate vampires to charge forward and block them. At this moment, his face was pale with anger. Only those guys from the Heaven-defying vow would create these skeletons. It seems the Heaven-defying vow has already violated the treaty. Just then, I transformed into Hans and slowly approached him. I don't care if you're heaven-defying or not. I'm taking that fragment of the Undead King behind you. Hearing this, Teofil's face twisted with rage. He pierced his own shoulder, and the faint scent of blood that drifted out instantly ignited his bloodlust. Seeing this, I calmly and unhurriedly reassembled the skeletons he had just shattered. Immediately after, several skeletons appeared from behind and grabbed Teofil's body tightly. And at that moment, I controlled another of my clones, Akin, to come to the rescue. With a wave of my hand, I smacked away the skeletons behind him. I told him, Lord Varak sensed something was wrong long ago. The skeletons outside are almost dealt with now, so I came in to see if I could be of any help. Hearing this, Teofil unleashed the intimidating pressure of a high-ranking vampire on me. After a careful inspection, he saw that I wasn't lying and completely let his guard down. He then gestured for me to stand behind him and lend my support. The next moment, I obediently did just that. Teofil's face was a mask of astonishment. How could I, a half-blood, attack a pure-blood vampire out of the blue? At that moment, he simply couldn't comprehend it. Besides, I was a half-blood that Lord Varak himself had brought back. Just then, two streams of dark magic energy wrapped tightly around his hands. He finally realized what was happening. He guessed that I might be the mole, working with the skeletons from the inside. It didn't take long for me to drain every last drop of blood from Teofil's body. The system notified me that by obtaining the blood of a pure blood vampire, I had acquired the skill, blood magic. Then tried to use the blood magic skill on the barrier in front of me. Since it was Teofil's skill, the barrier shouldn't be able to reject it. And just as I expected, the barrier dissolved in an instant. Placed inside was the second fragment of the immortal jade. I then focused the mental energy of my 3 avatars entirely on Hans. Meanwhile, outside the stone chamber, Varak, who had rushed to the scene, stared in disbelief at what was before him. He could no longer sense the aura of the Undead King's fragment, just like with the Heaven-defying vow. It had simply vanished. Soon after, in the darkness of the night, a massive, dark figure slowly materialized. Its silhouette gradually sharpened in the gloom, exuding a mysterious and oppressive aura. Seeing this, Varak hurriedly commanded his subordinate vampires to focus their fire on the dark figure. However, their attacks landing on me felt like nothing more than being tickled. Now, after having absorbed the second fragment of the Undead King, Hans had once again evolved, becoming a nether mage. The Undead King fragment collection progress reached 2/10. Destroyed. He will endlessly. My internal dark magic power grew explosively. Acquired special skills. Immortality and Gnostic consciousness. Resurrect. Immortality. Resurrect. As long as my core essence isn't catastrophically destroyed, I can endlessly revive and regenerate. Gnostic consciousness. Grants unconditional comprehension of all dark magic, and imparts all the world's existing knowledge and secrets. I then grabbed the scepter and cast a deathly dark magic. In an instant, Varak and his men were swallowed by a thick fog. And from within this dense mist, dark hands would suddenly shoot out from the depths, grabbing the unlucky vampires. The scene sent a chill down Varak's spine. Even he was powerless against these dark hands. After all the other vampires had been dealt with, my figure slowly approached Varak. It seems your bloodline truly is the purest, to have withstood this dark magic for so long. But now, you can rest easy and become my blood bag. A moment later, I controlled Heinz too, to successfully drain Varak. The next moment, the system prompted me. Individual has met new growth conditions. Special skill, Bloodkin Half-Blood, has evolved into Bloodkin Pure Blood. This was exactly as I predicted. Individual evolution can be achieved by devouring other races, just like Hans. Once I collect all 10 fragments of the Undead King, I should be able to evolve into the legendary Undead King. What's more, preying on my own kind allows for even faster growth. Meanwhile, elsewhere, because of Varak's death, the remaining half-blood vampires were forced to flee Azantu. Now, they could only return to their base and request aid from headquarters. Hans would stay behind in Azantu for the time being to deal with the remnants of the Belial organization. As for me, I took control of Heinz II and the siblings, Ella, and prepared to head to Lapella City in the eastern continent. Her uncle runs a shop there, and in any case, the siblings Have no other relatives in Azantu, and I can't possibly protect them at all times. It's a bit of a shame to part ways so suddenly after spending all this time together. Come to think of it, I haven't felt this way in many years, not since my parents passed away. My personality has changed so much since I awakened my powers. 2.5 days later, I returned to the village. The pocket dimension Hans gained after evolving was perfect for imprisoning these vampires. And if possible, I might even be able to open this dimension on Earth. Barak looked completely defiant. He'd never been treated like this before. Back then, I only forced his blood back into him. I didn't kill him. I figured keeping these vampires alive would be useful later on. Barak had also figured out that those guys from the heaven-defying oath were the ones who refined the undead king fragments. And that I must have them, because he could sense more than one powerful energy coming from me. So, I just went with it and confirmed my identity. You're right, I'm Hans, from the Heaven-Defying Oath organization. At that, Barak raised his hand and cast a blood barrier. He formed it using the last of the true blood left in his body. I tested it for a moment, and found it would be tough to break through quickly. Besides, just getting them here had already taken a lot out of Hans. So, I unsummoned him and returned to the real world. The second I left, a silver arrow suddenly shot towards one of the vampires at incredible speed. Barak instantly recognized where the arrow came from. It was a silver arrow specially crafted by the Holy Knights to fight vampires. Just then, a fairly large squad of Knight Crusaders, clad in silver armor, charged toward them with great fanfare. Back in the real world, I still couldn't quite believe everything that had happened recently. First, saving the poor and helpless girl, Ella. Then taking down an evil vampire coven all by myself. Saving Azantu from a tragic fate. Becoming some kind of world-saving hero. That's something I never even dared to dream of. With that in mind, I pulled up my system panel. After everything I'd done, I figured I must have racked up a ton of shop points. But what I wasn't expecting was that I actually had over 700,000 karma points. I figured it was probably because of the black mages and the vampires, since they were non-human races. Any quests related to them were extremely difficult, so it made sense for the rewards to be so huge. I decided to keep upgrading my skills. A moment later, the system notified me that the limit for my clone summons had increased. I also got a new skill called Mask. The main body can place its emotions into the clone as a vessel. An idea immediately flashed through my mind. I think I know why I got this skill now. All this time, whenever I've acquired an innate skill, its abilities have always been exactly what I needed at that moment. Before, I had grown close to strangers and helped others defeat powerful enemies. Every time I completed these tasks, new emotions I'd never felt before would surface. It's just that for the past few years, I've kept my own heart locked away in a corner. So while my body grew stronger, my spirit never did. All the accumulated negative emotions, loneliness, sadness, and all the rest, had been eating away at my soul to some extent. That's why this mask skill could really help me solve this predicament. It's just that the process of transferring the emotions isn't like the feelings just vanish instantly. It's more like slowly putting them away in a drawer. After he absorbed all those emotions, I was worried Hans wouldn't be able to handle it. The impact of so many negative emotions. Hearing my concern, Hans comforted me. Pain and despair have always been essential companions in life. For his necromancer race, that wasn't a big deal. The moment he finished speaking, I froze in place. Those were the words I once said to Hans. I never expected to hear them coming from his mouth. With such a different tone. It seems that after these doppelgangers have had their emotions removed, they're more like individuals with their own consciousness. Just then, I heard the sound of an explosion outside. At that moment, hesitation crept back into my heart. It had to be those villains causing trouble in the city again. But I was still struggling to overcome my own cowardice. Then, Hans slowly walked up to me. In a very firm tone, he said one thing to me: to eliminate evil forces. You don't need any reason at all. So there was no need for me to keep hesitating. That's when I realized something. The truth is, more than anyone, I wanted to stop these things from happening. It was just out of habit, my personality, that I always chose to run away. But now, I'm not the person I used to be. I'm not that useless cripple anymore. From this moment on, I have no more excuses to ignore this chaos. So, I took control of Hans and went to the scene of the incident. After surveying the scene for a moment, I cast the necromantic black magic, Eye of Insight. I used its ability to master all black magic to search for the villain's hideout. Right then, not too far away, a few villains were bullying some ordinary people for fun. And I happened to see that exact scene through the Eye of Insight. Besides that one, there were many other disturbances just like it. All of them were within my sight. It took me pretty much the entire night to clean up all the nearby villains. But I wasn't worried about them coming back to cause more trouble, because I had left an indelible mark of fear upon their very souls. Now, whenever they even think of doing something unlawful, they'll feel a splitting pain. However, the Eye of Insight has a very clear limitation. If it's exposed to light, its power gradually weakens and disappears. That means it would be difficult to continue cleaning up villains during the day. That's when I got an idea. There were tons of pigeons all over the city, looking for food. If I could just control them, I could solve this problem. This is also why so many people are drawn to black magic. One of the reasons is the ability to command all sorts of creatures at will. But I chanted for a long time and still couldn't command a single pigeon. I guessed that the effectiveness of subjugation magic must be related to the target creature's race. The pigeon race was clearly much harder to control than undead skeletons. So, I teleported to a cave in another world. After all, casting black magic on Earth was just too risky. 2.5 hours later, I finally managed to subjugate a single pigeon. Then, I added an infectious effect to the spell. That way, all the pigeons would obey my commands. For now, I'll call them the children of the demon. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Holy Knight Crusade had completely annihilated the vampire stronghold in Azantu. They also got some information out of Varak. The vampires were merely descendants of the Undying, and had entered into a cooperative relationship with them. This left Archbishop Latius with a troubled expression. From the battle scars in the stone chamber, he had deduced a few things. The vampires had indeed been helping to refine a fragment of the Undying. But now, it seemed that fragment had been taken by someone. And using his power of retrace, he deduced that the person was none other than Hans, from the Heaven-Defying Vow organization. Just then, the Saintess, Liastha, relayed an important message to Latius. She had picked up the Undying King's aura again. Its approximate location was a cave in the mountains to the northwest. At that moment, I was sitting cross-legged at the mouth of the cave, waiting for the intel gathered by my children of the demon. A moment later, I sensed something was wrong. The flight paths of the children of the demon were strange. Looked like they were being hunted. Before long, a company of knights appeared at the mouth of the cave. They were all wearing identical crosses. They must be paladins from the Order. So they were definitely here to capture Hans. After all, the Order has never been on good terms with dark magic. Just then, their leader, Knight Captain Locke, slowly approached. He told me it would be best if I surrendered quietly. I pretended to go along with it, and then, when he wasn't looking, I suddenly thrust my hand forward. But this time, it was as if my dark magic had lost all its power. The sword in Locke's hand pierced through my chest with ease. I really didn't get it. Even though I possessed the Undead King's dark magic, I only ever used it to punish bad guys. In that sense, wasn't I doing the same thing as you people? Who call yourselves a holy order? Hearing this, Locke immediately cut me off. He said that from the moment I chose to wield dark magic, I was destined to be no different from those villains. At that moment, I realized something was wrong with my body. From the very beginning, something had been hindering my use of dark magic. As I was thinking, I heard the sound of singing. It gradually drifted closer. I was certain it was this singing that was weakening my magical abilities. Although I still had enough power to kill the ones singing, doing so would make me no different from those scoundrels. And just at that moment, Locke raised his longsword and brutally plunged it into my body. Immediately, their singing began to slowly form a shimmering chain of light. But I just chuckled as I looked at them. I forgot to tell you something. Once upon a time, Varak was just as confident as you were that he could trap me. With that, I used my unsummon ability again and returned to Blue Star. Now things were getting complicated. Thinking back, in the other world, I had already made enemies with several organizations. First, there was the Heaven-Defying Vow. Then the Vampire Clan, and now the Order, one of the most powerful factions on the continent. Moreover, my very existence was causing all sorts of conflicts on the continent. No wonder my karma value was skyrocketing. At this time, the children of the demon were already making their move. Due to the contagious nature of the magic, whenever they encountered other individuals, they would quickly infect them with dark magic. So now, I basically had eyes and ears all over the city. It wasn't long before I received my first piece of intelligence. By the time I rushed over, the scoundrel was in the middle of torturing a girl. Seeing this, I immediately rushed in to stop him. Your life ends now. Take a good, long look back at your sinful life. When it comes to the level of evil, no magic can compare to dark magic. It forces a person to relive their own life and die in agony. It's like being killed by your own past. And because Hans had already undergone his second evolution, the death skeletons he now created had also evolved into their intermediate form, phantoms. 2.5 minutes later, Section Chief Park of the Abilities Management Bureau arrived on the scene with his team. But after investigating, they found the scene was very similar to the MO of a villain they had been tracking for a long time. However, from the traces left nearby, it looked very much like the Guardian's handiwork. They detected traces of a large amount of dark magic being used. But at this point, they were very eager to meet this Guardian. After all, it was the first time they had ever seen a Guardian leave a written message at a scene. At the same time, the Guardian Association received a request from the Abilities Management Bureau to assist in the investigation. They realized this case was strikingly similar to the one that led to the arrest of the trio. So they decided to have me join the association under the identity of the Guardian. Meanwhile, elsewhere, I projected my main consciousness into Heinz's body. By now, Heinz too had already brought Ella and her younger brother safely to Lapella City. As we were about to part ways, Ella hugged me tightly. She was grateful that I had been by her side this whole time. If it weren't for me, she very likely would have died in a Xantu. She's just still a little worried about me, because she's noticed that my personality has changed a lot. That made me pause. Could it be the influence of the mask? Previously, I had given my negative emotions and my desire for recognition to Hans. That's why Hans would do things to attract attention, like pretending to be a guardian. To punish those villains. As for Heinz too, I gave him silence and lies. I never thought Ella would notice the change so quickly. After saying goodbye to Ella and the others, I arrived in the kingdom's capital, Talaria. Besides being the capital city, it's also the headquarters of the Church of the Main God. I then found a hidden place, and summoned my fourth clone, Abu. His unique trait is martial aptitude. It allows him to gain bonus skills and experience through training. My previous clones all had identities that had to be kept secret. That's why I needed a public-facing identity to survive here in Talaria. And this time, my clone would become a swordsman of light, respected by everyone. So I went to the Grand Hall, hoping to become a paladin by dedicating my all to the main god and inheriting his will. Hearing this, the registrar looked completely disapproving, even though I had donated a lot of money. But allowing a person of unknown origin to become a paladin was, to him, somewhat blasphemous. The knight captain thought he was worrying too much. The holy scriptures clearly state that truly evil people will involuntarily reveal their true nature during paladin training. Hearing that, I chuckled and told them, in that case, feel free to keep a close eye on my true nature. I just never expected the paladin training to be so incredibly grueling. Not only did we have to complete over 12 hours of training every day, but we also had to chant those damn prayers at the same time. At first, I didn't understand this method at all. It wasn't until a month later that I learned that in extreme situations, strengthening one's holy power comes from reinforcing their faith through repeated prayer. I just wasn't sure if the people here had been tortured into idiots or what. They were always staring at my body with a strange gaze. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Thanks to my super recovery ability and the martial aptitude trait, I stood out in the training camp and became the top rookie. Only now was I allowed to participate in the paladin's baptism ceremony, and it was even a bit earlier than in previous years. I could pretty much guess the reason. The church was likely desperate to increase its fighting strength to track down the descendants of the undying king. This so-called baptism ceremony is actually a process of exchange. The recipient offers all of their mana to the main god, and as a result, their body can no longer wield magic. In return, the main god grants them a blessing, allowing them to wield powerful holy power. However, the magnitude of the blessing each person receives is different, and the biggest factor that determines its size is the strength of their faith in the main god. When facing the god, the more pure their trust is, free of lies, the more likely they are to become a powerful paladin. I wasn't worried about any of this. In fact, this was one of the reasons I was so eager to become a paladin. Because I had already used the mask to inject all feelings of trust into Abu. And to make the main god feel the purest faith possible, I gathered the mental strength of all my clones and focused it entirely on Abu. Therefore, when I received the baptism, gentle yet powerful golden light slowly rose from beneath my feet. At that moment, everyone was immersed in this divine radiance. It was the first time they had ever seen holy power so magnificent. It even reached the head of the main god's statue. The bishop told me something. With holy power at my level, he estimated that I was already at the rank of a high priest. Immediately after, the system notified me that I had acquired the skill, Divine Baptism. My spiritual power can be effectively shared with each of my clones, and I discovered that the god at the main god's altar is more like a system than a god with human-like characteristics. When I released my spiritual power to sense the god, if I had to use human emotions to describe the feeling I captured, it wouldn't be called trust. Perhaps it could be described as something close to interest. And the god also told me one thing. Holy power can only be used for good deeds. In the blink of an eye, it was the next day. The command post was in complete chaos. While they were tracking the descendants of the undead king, they were often hindered by vampire forces. And because the punitive expedition failed to achieve the expected results, the political pressure in the kingdom was becoming increasingly unbearable, forcing them to issue an order to retreat. A very frustrated Knight Captain Locke walked towards the training grounds. At this point, he could only place his hopes on the new recruits. Just then, he noticed a newcomer on the training grounds, who was performing exceptionally well. He then walked up to me. He said that my holy power had already reached the level of an instructor, but compared to a true holy knight, there was still a very clear gap. Unless, I was willing to go with him to the Roselia Grand Temple. I didn't think much of it and immediately accepted his invitation, although I had never heard of this Roselia Grand Temple. Judging from his tone, he was probably complimenting me. So I just followed him. On the way, Knight Locke explained the origin of the Grand Temple to me. It's the holy sanctuary of the main religious order, located in the heart of the continent. It is also the residence of the Pope and the Saintess. I never imagined I'd come directly to the temple where the Saintess lives. My instructor once said that this is the best place for accelerated growth. At the same time, in the real world, Hans's actions of punishing villains quickly went viral online. During this time, I noticed something strange. The villains always mentioned an organization called the Brahma Society, and this organization seemed to be the key that linked all these villains together. I then transformed into Heinz too and went to a mysterious place. The man was sitting there quietly. I slowly handed him a bag. "I'm here to sell something." The man scoffed without even lifting his eyelids. "I suppose I've come to the wrong place. This isn't an ordinary pawn shop." I ignored him and instead just turned the bag upside down and poured out its contents. With a loud clatter, gold coins rained down onto the table like a storm. This made the man's expression change abruptly. "If I'm not mistaken, these are the member badges of the human trafficking organization. According to what's on the internet, they were supposedly killed by some masked lunatic." He then sized me up for a moment. After weighing his options, he told me to go through the back door. But he warned me to not go anywhere else. I followed his instructions and found the back door. There, another masked figure was sitting. I asked him if it was possible to use something else instead of cash. "If you can, just give me a first prize lottery ticket. After all, no matter how much cash you have, if you can't use it, it's just a pile of useless paper. Right now, I need to be able to legally use this cash as Han Seong-yun, not as Hans or Heinz too. If I get the money in the form of a lottery prize, I can avoid any trouble with it being traced later on." 2.5 minutes later, the masked man said, "Of course we can. It's a lottery ticket worth about 6.1 billion. You can claim it anytime within the next 4 months. Hearing this, I was overjoyed. "In that case, please prepare 2 more tickets for me." The masked man helplessly held out his large hands. "The items in your bag are worth 6.1 billion at most." Hearing that, I gestured for him not to worry. "I have many more valuable things right here." As I spoke, as if by magic, I revealed 3 heavy gold bricks. They appeared out of thin air, landing steadily on the table in front of us. The masked man's gaze merely swept over the gold bricks. Then, his eyes fixed on the bracelet on my wrist in astonishment, and he apologized for what he had said earlier. "This bracelet on my hand is obviously a subspace item. That's something only the Guardians are qualified to have." A flash of anger crossed my eyes. "I'm in a hurry, so you'd better finish this deal quickly." Just then, the masked man seemed to snap out of a dream. No wonder when I first came in, he had smelled the faint scent of blood, combined with the items in the bag. I was most likely that mysterious person online known for killing villains. I stepped forward and gripped his arm. "I'm very pleased with our transaction today. I'll be coming back often." The masked man instantly understood my meaning. I was clearly warning him not to tell anyone that I had been here. A moment later, I left the pawn shop with the Xuanzhang color bleach. Suddenly having so much money, I honestly couldn't think of a single thing to buy. But on second thought, what I probably need more right now are some underlings I can order around. Besides, the streets were now bustling and lively. A few months ago, this place had such a high crime rate that many people didn't even dare to come out for fresh air. Now, thinking about the peaceful scene before me, to realize that I had created it with my own 2 hands. I'm not sure why, but in my heart, I felt a wave of gratification. And just at that moment, a strange voice suddenly spoke right next to my ear. My heart skipped a beat. Who on earth was this person? He got right behind me without making a single sound. Without a second thought, I quickly shot to my feet. "You were secretly sniffing me from behind? What the hell do you think you're doing?" But his words froze me in place. "If I'm not mistaken, you're a vampire too, aren't you?" He was a level 6 vampire from the Dodemia dimension. His words left me stunned. This guy was a vampire from another dimension? The truth is, after a person awakens their powers, the dimension they get transported to is completely random. Up to this point, tens of thousands of different dimensions have been created. But my top priority was to find an excuse to get out of here. If my identity was exposed in public, it would be all over. And yet, the very next moment, I found myself naturally revealing my identity. I was completely baffled. How did I answer him so naturally? Can he control my mind? He immediately got a look on his face like he knew it all along. His name was Gamma, and he was from an organization called the Blood Alliance. It's an organization made up of Earth's vampires. After he returned to Earth, his job was to recruit other vampires for the organization. As he spoke, he slowly held out a business card for the Blood Alliance. I was a bit confused. I had no idea an organization like this existed on Earth. But, what did you mean earlier when you said, level? Gamma didn't answer my question. He just said that if I was interested, I should come with him. At the same time, I noticed the eyes of a few people behind us, darting towards us from time to time. Judging by their movements, it looked like they were reporting back to someone. Before long, I followed Gamma to a basement. Since vampires are afraid of sunlight, the Blood Alliance had set up its base in a basement. Then, Gamma started to explain to me what level actually meant. Level, as the name suggests, is simply your power level. All vampires have what's called a vampiric factor, which determines their level of power. The Blood Alliance can measure this factor and assign it a numerical value. The final number we get. This determines each vampire's power level. Following him, we soon arrived at a secret room. Gamma explained that the magic circle before us was used to detect one's vampire factor. He told me not to just stand there like a statue. Since I was here, I should get up there and give it a try. The moment I stepped into the magic circle, I froze. Why is there a head here? What's more, I could feel traces of black magic in this place. It wasn't just black magic. There were also hints of sorcery, curses, alchemy, and more. The aura of all these different kinds of magic combined. Everything here was completely beyond my understanding. More than 20 years had passed since the first group of superhumans returned to Blue Star. But even now, things like magical items were still incredibly rare. And the reason for that was due to the laws of energy governing these abilities. Their application differs in every domain. For example, mana and black magic are two completely different things. But it seems the Blood Pact organization has mastered the ability to combine various types of magic. Just then, 5 beads of blood appeared on the circle. This meant my vampire factor was at the 5th level, and the connections between the beads were strong. In other words, my regenerative abilities would be quite powerful. According to the laws of the bloodline, my pure blood level is around grade 6. Just then, Gamma's expression suddenly darkened. At first, when he heard I was from a different dimension, he had some expectations, but he never thought my vampire factor would only be at the 5th level. As he said this, he gave a signal with his eyes. The next moment, several vampires lunged forward, grabbing at me fiercely. This, I didn't expect. So they had another motive all along. No wonder they needed to use such complex magic to determine my level. But suddenly, at that very moment, the door to the secret room was pushed open from the outside. The newcomer told Gamma to stop what he was doing immediately, and that he was under arrest for the crime of kidnapping and attempting to murder his own kind. Gamma looked annoyed. Lee Min-ju, isn't it a bit rude to just barge into someone's home like this? I looked at Lee Min-ju. She looked a little familiar, like I'd seen her somewhere before. Gamma's face was filled with rage as he questioned Lee Min-ju, telling her to get her head straight. He told her to stop foolishly following the Blood Pact's rules of survival, because the pact was nothing but a bunch of spineless servants to the humans. Their kind was clearly stronger and nobler than humans, yet now they had to tiptoe around them. Forced to hide and live underground. Lee Min-ju's expression darkened as she shot back. It's precisely because of the reckless actions of hardliners like you that we're forced to hide and live like this. Her words made Gamma chuckle. Do you really think all of our kind thinks the same way you do? The moment he finished speaking, Ji-hoon, the colleague standing behind Lee Min-ju, made his move. He slammed his fist right into Lee Min-ju's stomach. He had already sided with Gamma long ago. Back in his own dimension, Ji-hoon had been a lord with his own castle and title. But after returning to Earth, not only was he forced to live in a shabby, filthy basement, but to make a living, he had to work as a doorman at night. Lee Min-ju looked at him, completely bewildered. Even so, that's no reason to kidnap our own kind. Are you planning to rebel against the Blood Pact? Hearing this, Gamma chuckled sinisterly. Not quite. I'm here specifically to collect low-level vampires. In this reality, I can no longer gain any more karma points. So to continue getting stronger, there's only one method left. Preying on our own kind. It's not like the typical cannibalism you see on Earth. You have to prey on vampires from different dimensions. Because when different vampire factors combine, they become incredibly powerful. But if they simply prey on their own kind, it causes severe mental contamination. If they can't overcome this mental contamination, they become mutated, deranged blood fiends. Once, a deranged blood fiend that had completely lost its sanity appeared on Earth. To deal with that one fiend, humanity paid an extremely painful price. After that, vampires became synonymous with danger. But now, after countless studies, they've finally figured out how to remove the malevolent intent from the blood. And in that moment, I understood something. I'm guessing this magic circle isn't just for detecting vampire factors. It can probably also turn a vampire into a drug with no side effects. Then, I saw Ganmo hand Ji-hun a pill. After swallowing it in one gulp, Ji-hun's body began to swell at a visible rate. He never imagined that consuming his own kind would result in such a different level of growth. At this moment, he felt like his body was brimming with inexhaustible power. He immediately grabbed Lee Min-ju by the neck. This is nowhere near enough. Go ahead and refine her into a pill for me, too, Ganmo said softly. Let's keep Lee Min-ju for now. There's still a pure-blooded vampire waiting for him. However, the moment his gaze met mine, a wild smirk spread across my lips. What you two are saying is really interesting. Now I'm actually a little excited to see just how powerful I'll become after I devour you both. As I spoke, a great gate made of piled-up skulls suddenly appeared before me. Then, Hans's figure slowly walked out from within, followed by dozens of sinister, terrifying undead skeletons. This made Ganmo and the others' hearts seize up. What the hell are these things? Jihan didn't say a word and just continued to swell his body. Boom.